All right, if I can get everybody seated, we would like to get ourselves started. All right, it's still morning, so good morning, everybody, and welcome to the CPA September 19, 2025 meeting. The CPA welcome and encourage public participation throughout the meeting. Members of the public have an opportunity to provide comment in person or via WebEx platform. Instruction on how to make a public comment will be provided whenever a comment period is open. You will be allotted up to 5 minutes for public comment. And I totally forgot to even introducing myself, Yen Tu, President of California Board of CPA. And with that, Ms. Reed, could you call the roll?
Member Aguilera,
Present.
Member Batchelor,
Here.
Member Corrigan,
Nancy Corrigan, present.
Member Dawn,
Present.
Member Guzman,
Present.
Member Hines,
Present.
Member Lotta,
Present.
Member Lynn,
Here.
Member Rayful,
Here.
Member Rosenbaum,
Here.
Member Two.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. All right, at this point, I'd like to read the mission statement for our record. The CPA's mission is to protect consumer by ensuring only qualified licensors practice public accountancy in accordance with established professional standards. This mission is derived from the statutory requirement that the protection of the public shall be the highest priority for the California Board of Accountancy in exercising its licensing, regulatory, and disciplinary functions. Whenever the protection of the public is inconsistent with the other interests sought to be promoted, the protection of the public shall be paramount. All right. With that, we're going to move on to our agenda item number 5. Is there any public comment for item not on the agenda? Any board member? How about in Burbank? See none. Ms. WebEx, could we open up WebEx for any comments, please?
Certainly. If anyone on WebEx would like to make a comment on an item that is not already on the agenda, you may do so by raising your hand, and the hand raise icon is typically at the bottom of your WebEx screen. If you're using a mobile device, that hand icon might be behind the 3-dot other options. And if you are a call-in user, you can press *3 to raise your hand. Are there any comments on items not on the agenda? I do not see any raised hands. Shall I close public comment?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Moderator.
You're welcome.
All right, we're moving on to item 6A. 6A is the information regarding the annual executive officer evaluation. Before we hear from the Department of Consumer Affairs Office of Human Resources, I want to mention that there is a chart flow regarding the performance appraisal process in the materials. Following this meeting, staff will be sending the CPA's annual report for fiscal year 2024-25 that may assist you in completing the evaluation in addition to other reports and presentations you might reflect upon. They will be these will be provided this will provide an overview of the activities, projects, and programs the CPA Executive Officer oversees. I would like to now welcome Olivia Triho, Staff Service Manager 1 from the Office of Human Resources, who will be providing the presentation via WebEx.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great. I'll get started. Greetings, President 2 and board members. My name is Olivia Trejo, and I am the Office of Human Resources Chief at the Department of Consumer Affairs. With Executive Officer Franzella's upcoming annual performance evaluation at the November board meeting, today I will present on the Executive Officer evaluation process. The flowchart President to refer outlines the processes and steps I will go over today. The Executive Officer evaluation process is an opportunity for the board to assess Executive Officer Franzella's performance over the past year and to set expectations for the upcoming year. Today's presentation is a high-level overview, so please note that approximately 1 month prior to the November's board meeting, I or a designee will send detailed instructions and relevant documents to all board members outlining roles and responsibilities. The appraisal form contains 4 performance factors. The 4 factors contain sub-factors, and you will be responsible to independently assess Executive Officer Franzella and be prepared to discuss as a group factors 1 through 4 during the November board meeting in closed session. The appraisal form also has a section that captures commentary from DCA executive leaders on key points required of an executive officer. The DCA executive leader commentary will be shared with all board members at the November board meeting, again during closed session. The board president is responsible for consolidating all board members' comments onto one final performance appraisal form. And once the performance appraisal is finalized, President 2 meets separately with Executive Officer Franzella to discuss their performance and the board's input. After the board, President 2 and Executive Officer Franzella sign the final version, the signed appraisal form will be placed in Executive Officer Franzella's official personnel file in the Office of Human Resources. That concludes my overview of the process, and as I mentioned earlier, more detailed instructions will be sent to all board members 1 month prior to the meeting, with a reminder a week before. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today, and I am available to answer any questions.
Thank you so much for that presentation. Do I see any board member with any questions or? Yes, Ms. Lata.
Thank you, President Tu. I see here on the process diagram, it says for board members to email their completed form to the president. I know last year, I think we just brought all of our appraisals in person and discussed. Will that be the case again this year, or are we following the process on the diagram?
I'll defer to President 2 on how she wants to receive the information. Either or works. But I know sometimes board members, not necessarily this board, but they don't complete it or provide it ahead of time. So if that's the case, definitely bring it to the board meeting in November.
Yeah, and I recommend that we all send our comment when we did do it to Rebecca so that she is the depository of all the information. Oh, she can't, oh no, I'm sorry, these are the evaluation, but you all have my email in the package. So if you can send that, and you can also, Ms. Lata, bring a copy so that you have one for our discussion on closed session. Yeah. Yes.
President, too, if it works for the members and for you, we can just chat offline, and we're planning on sending a communication after the board meeting is over. So in that communication, we can provide some specific direction on exactly where to send the evaluations or to bring them to the November board meeting or both. So if we can finalize that and communicate after the board meeting if that works.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Good solution. All right, any other comments from the board? Seeing none, anybody from Burbank location? Seeing none, Ms. Moderator, could you open up WebEx for a comment?
Certainly, if anyone from WebEx would like to make a comment on the process we've described or the presentation, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand. And our calling users can press *3 to raise their hand. Are there any comments on the process? I do not see any questions. Shall I close the public comment period?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Moderator.
You're welcome.
Right, we're moving on to item 6B. This item is the resolution for retirement of Qualification Committee member Michael Williams, CPA. Can I get a motion to accept the retirement of Mr. Williams? Thank you, Ms. Arofa, and thanks, Ms. Colligan.
Yes, I'll second that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Moved by Mr. Raffle. Time is the time. And second by Ms. Corrigan and Ms. Rebecca, Ms. Reed, can you? Oh, yes. Any public comment from the Burbank location? Seeing none, Ms. Moderator, could you open up WebEx, please?
Certainly, if anyone would like to make a comment on the item, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand. And our call-in users may press *3 to raise their hand. Any comments on the resolution? I do not see any raised hands. Shall I close the public comment period?
Yes, thank you very much for that. Now, Ms. Reed, can you take the vote?
Member Aguilera,
Yes.
Member Batchelor,
Yes.
Member Corrigan,
Yes.
Member Dong,
Yes.
Member Guzman,
Yes.
Member Hines.
Yes.
Member Lotta,
Yes.
Member Lynn,
Yes.
Member Rayful.
Yes.
Member Rosenbaum.
Yes.
Member 2.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. All right, we're moving on to item 6C. And from 6C to 6G, we're gonna take those items and then I'm gonna call for public comment for those items together. All right, at the November meeting, the CPA will elect the president, vice president, and secretary treasurer. The president, secretary, vice president, and secretary serve one-year terms and may not serve more than 2 consecutive terms. CPA member who wish to consider for leadership position should submit a statement of qualification to Rebecca Reed, Board Relations Analyst by October 10, 2025. Somebody's having a birthday on October 10. I wonder who that is. Nancy Dong. All right. Any board member have any question, please? Seeing none, I will move on to the next item, which is item 6D, is a written report on the California Board of Accountancy 2025 legislative tracking chart. If you have any questions from the board, it's a written comment report. And item 6E is the update of California Board of Accountancy sponsored legislation, Assembly Bill 1175, and Mr. Hemphill will do the presentation.
Yes, thank you, President Tu. Good morning, members. I am David Hemphill, the Information and Planning Officer. With the CBA, I have 3 brief items to present to you. And Madam President, if it's acceptable, I'll go through all 3 and then I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you.
I'll go quickly. All right, so we'll begin with item 6E, an update on Assembly Bill 1175, the California Board of Accountancy's sponsored legislation. We're excited to say that AB 1175 passed the Senate with a unanimous floor vote on September 2nd and was officially presented to the governor on the 9th. It's exciting to note there was not a single nay vote on our bill at any point of the entire legislative process. The governor now has 30 days until October 9th to act on the bill. We submitted a request for signature letter to the governor's office in early September. I would like to thank all of you CBA members who have been so helpful throughout the process, as well as the California Society of CPAs for their support. All right, moving on to item 6F, the update on legislation with California Board of Accountancy impacts. We'll start with 6F1, which was Assembly Bill 1405. That was the one about the artificial intelligence auditors enrollment. So it was held in the Senate Appropriations Committee on August 18th, meaning it is dead for the 2025 session, and it is could be eligible to be heard again next year. 6F2, an update on the 3 school accountability measures, which was Assembly Bill 84, Senate Bill 414, Senate Bill 719, that proposed to strengthen the oversight of local education agencies, or LEAs. As previously reported, SB 719 failed a deadline, did not move forward. Following our July meeting, the CBA's concerns regarding peer review and the other issues were expressed to the author's office and key stakeholders. Both bills were amended, but ultimately only SB 414 moved forward, and that one is now on the governor's desk awaiting further action. AB 84, having failed its deadline, is now dead for this year, but like SB 719, becomes a 2-year bill and could be heard again in 2026. All right, I will now turn it back to President Tu for questions, comments, or any.
Thank you,
Questions?
Mr. Hamhill.
Yep.
I'm seeing no hand raised for question or comment. So I'm moving on to item 6G, Department of Consumer Affairs Director's Report on Department Activity. Ms. Julianne Allen, Legislative Analyst, Department of Legislative Affairs, will do a report.
Good morning. Can you all see and hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, great. So my name is Julianne Allen. I am a legislative analyst in the Division of Legislative Affairs with the Department of Consumer Affairs, and I'll be providing the director's update. The first subject is the hybrid telework transition. On March 3rd, 2025, Governor Newsom issued an executive order requiring all state agencies and departments to update their hybrid telework policies for employees and increase from 2 to 4 days in office per week beginning on July 1st, 2025. At the end of June, agreements with several labor unions representing employees within the Department of Consumer Affairs were released, delaying the 4-day in-office requirement by 1 year for most employees. We appreciate staff's flexibility as the situation evolved. Second, travel updates. As a reminder, on June 9th, 2025, the Department of Finance issued guidance for out-of-state travel in the upcoming fiscal year. Travel outside of California will be limited to essential travel that is required to conduct state business, meaning requests should only be made for mission-critical needs. DCA distributed a memo to all boards and bureaus on June 16th, 2025, detailing the criteria for mission-critical travel, including, but not limited to, enforcement actions, revenue collection, statutory requirements, auditing, and litigation. All requests must be provided to DCA's budget office 8 weeks in advance to allow for review by DCA agency and the governor's office. If there are any questions, please contact your assigned budget analyst at DCA. We'd also like to remind board members and staff of our collective responsibility to always work to minimize the cost to the state through responsible travel planning and scheduling. To best serve the public, it is incumbent upon all of us to ensure that we are being fiscally prudent in our decisions, especially when traveling for board business. DCA is reminding members and staff to evaluate if a rental car is always necessary versus ride-sharing services. Carpooling is also highly encouraged when renting vehicles. We know that there may be new travel costs board members are experiencing as well, such as baggage charges. So please keep receipts to ensure that you can be reimbursed. If you have any questions, please reach out to memberrelations@dca.ca.gov so we may assist you. And finally, I believe the annual report is one of DCA's biggest projects. Staff work on this report throughout the year, gathering information and statistical data in order to compile a comprehensive report about the department's actions to submit to the legislature. On behalf of the director, thank you to board staff for your efforts and contributions. Published to the DCA website this summer, the annual report has a wealth of information and memorializes all the great work done by so many throughout the department. DCA encourages board members to take time to review it and use it as a resource. In closing, please let DCA know if you have any questions or need assistance. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Allen, for that report. We appreciate that. All right, we are going to take public comment from 6D to 6G. Any public comment in Burbank? Seeing none, Ms. Moderator, could you open up WebEx for public comment?
Certainly, if anyone would like to make a comment on the material presented, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand. If you're on a mobile device, that hand might be behind the three-dot other options. And if you are a call-in user, you can press *3 to raise your hand. Are there any comments on the material? I do not see any raised hands. Shall I close public comment?
Yes, thank you very much. All
You're
right, item number 7, report on the Vice President, Ms. Lara.
Thank you, President Tu. This is our agenda item 7A, our appointments and reappointments to the Enforcement Advisory Committee. And this item is to recommend the reappointment of Jeffrey DeLizer, CPA, to the Enforcement Advisory Committee. The Enforcement Advisory Committee assists the CBA in an advisory capacity with enforcement activities. This includes reviewing closed investigation files, providing technical guidance on open investigations, and participating in investigative hearings. I conferred with the CBA executive officer to verify that Mr. DeLizer has met the appropriate requirements for license renewal and has demonstrated the skills and knowledge to continue to serve as a member on the Enforcement Advisory Committee. I would like to make a motion to reappoint Jeffrey DeLizer, CPA, to the Enforcement Advisory Committee through September 30th, 2027. I will turn it back to President Tu and ask for a second.
All right, do I see a second, Ms. Rolf? One of these days, I will not mess up your name. Second, and then we are now for public comments. Anybody from Burbank? Seeing none, Ms. Moderator, can you open up WebEx for comment?
Certainly, if anyone would like to make a comment on the appointment reappointments, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand, or call-in users can press *3 to raise their hand. Any comments? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Reed, could you call the roll?
Member Tu,
Yes.
Member Rosenbaum,
Yes.
Member Rayful.
Yes.
Member Lynn,
Yes.
Member Lotta,
Yes.
Member Hines,
Yes.
Member Guzman, Member Dong,
Yes.
Member Corrigan,
Yes.
Member Batchelor,
Yes.
and Member Aguilera.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. All right, item number 8, Mr. Aguilar. Oh, you still. I beg your pardon, Ms. Ladder still have another item.
Thank you, President Tu. I will continue on with item 7B, our appointments and reappointments to the Peer Review Oversight Committee. I apologize in advance if I mispronounce any of these names. So this item is to recommend the reappointment of Jeffrey DeLizer, CPA, the reappointment of Fausto Hinojosa, CPA, reappointment of Nick Peterson, CPA, and appointment of Vikram Deshpande, CPA, to the Peer Review Oversight Committee. The Peer Review Oversight Committee assists the CBA in an advisory capacity in its oversight of the peer review program. I've conferred with the CBA Executive Officer to verify that all have met the appropriate requirements for the license renewal and have demonstrated the skills and knowledge to serve or continue to serve as a member on the Peer Review Oversight Committee. I would like to make a motion to reappoint Jeffrey DeLizer, CPA, Fausto Hinojosa, CPA, Nick Peterson, CPA, and appoint Vikram Deshpande, CPA, to the Peer Review Oversight Committee. I will now turn it back to President Tu for a second.
All right, thank you, Mr. Rayful. Would you like to make a motion to second it?
I would be honored to second the motion.
Bear with me, Mr. Rayful. I try too hard. That's the problem. I keep thinking it's going to be something else. And so my mind keeps tricking me. All right. Any public comment from Burbank? All right. Moderator, could you open up WebEx for comment?
Certainly, if anyone would like to make a comment on the appointments and reappointment to the Peer Review Oversight Committee, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand. Our call-in users may press *3 to raise their hands. Any comments on the PROC appointments? I do not see any raised hands. Shall I close the comment feature?
Yes, please. Thank you. All right. Now Ms. Latta is done and Mr. Aguilar. Oh, vote. I'm having a little difficulty this morning. So Ms. Reed, could you call the roll?
Member Aguilera,
Yes.
Member Bachelor,
Yes.
Member Corrigan,
Yes.
Member Dong, Member Guzman,
Yes.
Member Hines, Member
Yes.
Lotta,
Yes.
Member Lynn,
Yes.
Member Rayful.
Yes.
Member Rosenbaum.
Yes.
And Member Two.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Now, Mr. Aguilar, are you ready? Because I'm not
Yes.
quite ready, apparently.
Thank you, President Tu. This agenda item 8A is the Secretary Treasurer's Report. Provided for your review is the fiscal year 2024-2025 year-end financial statements, which covers the period of that began back in July of 2024 and just ended in June of 2025. The CBA's budget authority at the close of fiscal year 2024-2025 was $19,785,000. As shown on page 2, total revenue reached $21.86 million, a 15% increase over fiscal year 2023-2024. The largest revenue source was license renewal fees, contributing over $15.3 million. The expenditure report is on page 3. The CBA expended 89.6% of its budget and had a budget surplus of just over 10%, or approximately $2.1 million. Page 4 provides a comparison of expenditures between fiscal year 24-25 and fiscal year 23 and 24. Pages 5 through 7 highlight key expenditure areas. There may be areas where the spending exceeds the identified line item budget allocation. However, this is permitted as long as expenditures don't exceed the annual budget authority. And specifically, general expense spending increased, driven by higher costs for courier services, freight and drayage, meeting space, rentals, subscription renewals, and office supplies. Expenditures for external contracts on line 16 increased, resulting from additional credit card transaction costs following the fee increase on July 1, 2024, and work occurring for the business modernization project. Departmental services shows a significant overage related to its $1,000 budget allocation. However, this variance is expected as expenditures in this category fluctuate annually based on the volume and type of services received from other state departments. Similarly, equipment expenditures significantly exceeded the modest $16,000 budget allocation. However, spending levels were generally consistent with the prior fiscal years. The increase reflects necessary investments in computers, software, and furniture to support ongoing operational upgrades and technology enhancements. Page 8 outlines enforcement expenditures over the past 5 fiscal years. In fiscal year 24-25, enforcement costs rose by 15.9% compared to last year, totaling $779,314, with the majority allocated to the Office of the Attorney General. The fund balance analysis on page 9 shows that the increase in revenue is largely attributed to the fee increase effective July 1, 2024. A second phase of this fee increase is scheduled for July 1, 2026, which will help ensure the continued financial health of the Accountancy Fund. The CBA concluded the fiscal year with a 10.4% surplus and 13.4 months in reserve, demonstrating the strong financial stewardship and long-term sustainability. Overall, the CBA had a positive fiscal year with increased revenues and growth in training, travel and modernization projects to support its consumer protection mission and long-term strategic goals, while also reverting surplus monies to its accountancy fund to support future operations. This concludes the formal remarks in my presentation for fiscal year 24-25 year-end financial statement. And what I would like to add is if we think about all the accomplishment during that fiscal year that ended June 30th, 2025, and then to know that just 90% of the budget was used, I think that the CBA staff deserves a great deal of credit for accomplishing a lot with just a little and being good stewards of the funds allocated to them. I'm happy to answer and have staff available to answer any questions members may have.
First of all, thank you very much for that report. And then I concur with your comment regarding how staff doing a great job of fiscal conservative. And Ms. Latta, you have a question?
Yes, thank you, President Tu. I'm working at the expenditure statement on page 4, and I know, Mr. Aguilera, you noted that in some categories we may be over, but as long as it's in total we're not over, that's acceptable. I do see we are exceeding budget by 2%, which is minimal. I'm just curious, is there ever like a negative impact or a consequence on the state level for being over budget? I'm just curious.
If we were overall over budget, Mr. Franzella would be writing a check for the amount we exceed. And that's no joke. But in terms of the actual line items, no. This is, I hate to say a common practice, but it's not unusual for this to occur, not just with our board, but with other agencies as well. So no, I don't see that would be a negative impact in the future.
And I'm assuming we draw from the fund if there's any overture.
Yeah.
Your account, yes, of course.
Yeah, it would be Dominic's savings account. I think we'd pull from. No,
But depending on if he has a savings account, right?
it would be a huge process. It would be, if we got to we wouldn't get to the point where we overexpended. If we were projecting that we were getting near our budget authority, then we would be looking at like shutting down a lot of services. For example, enforcement cases would stop because we would need to have, save that money from those budget items to make sure we could continue operations. If it got to the point where there was an issue, we would be working with the Department of Consumer Affairs, their budget office, depending on what the issue was, about possibly pulling money from our fund or borrowing money from another board or another board within the Department of Consumer Affairs. That could also occur. But usually in cases where this has occurred, there's been potentially a big lawsuit going on. So but we would be looking at, planning and not addressing that and not having Dominic write a check. So,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Mr. Canute, you seem like you are dying to say something.
Actually, your assistant executive officer covered it quite well. The only thing I will add is that there is certainly a level of readjustment at times, with actually much more so with with programs funded by the general fund. But in the Budget Act, the Department of Finance retains authority to augment or move around items of appropriation, but it's a long process going through that and involves a lot of levels of scrutiny. So
Yeah, so you
FYI.
avoid doing that. You go to Dominic first. So, all right. Thank you very much. Mr. Rosenbaum.
Yes, my question was actually going to be, what is the appropriate months in reserve that we have? I know that's been a discussion in the past, but I don't know that anyone else here has heard it. But what's the appropriate number? We're going from 13 to 15. But then my question morphed into, what's the point of having a reserve if we can't use it when we might have a budget overrun?
Well, I'll start and then I'll open it up. Mr. Franzella has any additional comments. So there's a statutory requirement that we can't exceed 24 months in reserve. So that's in the law. And depending on who you ask, they will give you a different answer on what they think the minimum is, although I don't believe there's a floor in statute. But they start looking at 3 months in reserve before they start getting concerned about needing fee increases to increase that. We had previously, several years ago, got guidance from the legislature that they wanted us to have a 24-month in reserve level, primarily to address unforeseen enforcement cases that might come up. Our enforcement workload and litigation costs have stabilized over the last 20 years, I will say. So when we were going through the last fee increase, that wasn't necessarily the target we were trying to hit. We were trying to, at that point, just make sure that our revenues covered our expenditures and to also show some growth in future years if we get to a point where we need to draw from it. We can pull money from our fund. There's a process to go through it. It's a budget change proposal. It's projecting, though, and requesting in the future. There's a different process if we were in a position where we were all of a sudden short on funds during the current budget year. So that's kind of a different process. But the amount in our fund condition, it really provides us some flexibility to draw from that if we are hit with significant enforcement matters. If we are in litigation for any purpose at all, we can draw from that. We have provisions for that. It also enables us to pull money for any operational needs that we need that the board has directed us on. For example, business modernization costs that might come up, we can pull money from the fund to help support those efforts. Additional positions, if we need additional staffing resources or additional resources, for any potential future increase. It's more just a planning process. It takes about 18 months to do. But there are ways to get it if we need it. But in terms of like having, in a single year running out of money in our budget, that's not that we couldn't draw money from that fund, but it's just a different process that we would have to go through for that. Hopefully that helps.
Yes, thank you very much.
Ms. Latta?
Thank you, President Tu. I was looking at page 3, and I was looking at line item 12, our out-of-state travel. I noticed that we did not budget for that line item this fiscal year. Is that because there was an existing travel ban at the time that budget was created, or do we plan to budget for that the next fiscal year that's upcoming?
So we don't usually establish a budget specific to out-of-state travel. It's just pulled from the in-state travel monies. And because it varies from year to year, some years we haven't been able to travel at all. So it's not that we can't get the money. We have to go through a little bit of a rigorous process to do it, but we just don't establish a specific budget for that.
All right, thank you. Ms. Corrigan?
Does anyone remember a few years back what our months in reserve, what level it was when the borrowing from our fund to the general fund of 10 million took place?
We were, and I'd have to go back and look. There was a $10 million loan that was done right around COVID time. And then there was prior. Yeah, in total, we've had like 31.2 million in funds borrowed from us to support the general fund. And that goes back to mid-90s-ish, I want to say. Part of those earlier loans were because our months in reserve levels were really high, like 30 months in reserve. And so that kind of, with the loans being taken out, that kind of started some additional work to look at lowering our fees and our revenues to pull down the months in reserve. which we ended up reducing our fees. If some of you may remember where our renewal fees were at $50 at one time. So we pulled that revenue down and it pulled from our months in reserve and kind of got a little lower than we were comfortable with. And now based on the fee increase we did that took effect July 1st of 2024, we're back actually balancing that now. But when they did the last $10 million loan, I can't remember what our months in reserve level was. They always make sure it's not going to break us when they take that money. So, but I can get that number if you want me to go back and look, Ms. Corrigan.
Yeah, it does go up and down, and depending on the state situation, the loans can be challenging for us too. So any other question, Mr.
Do you need a motion to accept the treasurer's report?
It's already motioned and no, there's no motion yet. There's no need for a motion. So, but I do need public comment from Burbank. Seeing none, Ms. Moderator, could you open up WebEx?
Certainly, if anyone would like to make a comment on the report, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand. And if you are a calling user, you may press *3 to raise your hand. Are there any comments on the budget report? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that public comment feature?
Yes, thank you very much, Ms. Moderator.
You're
All right, so I'm going to do a little bit of moving around just to make sure, ensure that we have quorum. I'm going to move item 14 up next. Mr. Aguilar, would you like to report out on item 14?
Item 14 is the report on the Committee on Professional Conduct. And if you were lucky enough to be here, you saw that the committee was quite active as a result of a very ambitious staff. And this morning's CPC meeting featured a full agenda and robust discussion, starting with CPC item 3. This was a continuation of policy directions regarding modernizing continuing education, or CE, requirements. This discussion is consistent with the CBA's strategic plan, Goal 2, Objective 2.4, which states, develop and implement modernized continuing education requirements as needed in response to new developments in learning approaches or technology to assure CPAs have currency of knowledge. The focus today was on CE provider requirements, including safeguarding CE quality when it comes to the use of artificial intelligence, or AI, to develop that education. The CBA's Continuing Education Work Group, which was established in 2024, worked with the staff to provide recommendations for possible inclusion in a future rulemaking package. The recommendations for course provider requirements include provide more transparency in learning objectives to assist licensees with selecting CE, course quality changes to include safeguards from potential negative impacts of AI, require technology failure policies, require providers to resolve or disclose conflicts of interest, require elements of a participant engagement at specific timing intervals, add a clarifying statement that self-certification of attendance completion by a licensee is not sufficient, require course providers to retain documentation demonstrating how the provider determined how much CE credit a course will award for successful completion, require providers to provide participants with a certificate of completion within 60 days of course completion, allow through course tests in addition to end of course tests to provide additional flexibility to providers, and last, require a human instructor for all synchronous CE courses, another recommendation directly related to AI. The CPC discussed possible negative impacts of AI and the need for safeguards. The CPC also discussed whether there should be a requirement for participants to have their video on during synchronous courses. No change was recommended, but members discussed ensuring that a participation engagement is prioritized during attendance at a CE course. Additionally, the CPC commented on the 60-day time frame for the CE provider to issue a course completion certificate, However, the CPC did not recommend a change to keep this timeframe consistent with the NASBA CE standards. The CPC recommends now that the CBA approve the staff recommendation, which includes the policy directions as detailed in the agenda items on pages 4 through 8 for inclusion in a future rulemaking package to address CE course provider requirements. This is a fully formed motion and a second is not needed. I'll now turn it back over to President Tu for the vote.
All right, thank you. All right, any comment or question? Yes, Ms. Dong.
So thank you so much for that readout. Just a question, because the recommendation is that a subject matter expert look over the content before it's delivered to CPAs. How do we know that this person, or do we regulate the SME as a CBA board? Do they have to get some kind of license in order to become an SME, or how do we verify that they are experts?
I'm going to punt on this, but I would imagine that it's part of a quality control process to make sure that it's an appropriate provider and appropriate content. Senator can correct me.
If you have any specific feedback on what you think a subject matter expert qualification should be, we're happy to take that. We will not be evaluating at the board whether or not that person is a subject matter expert. That is the responsibility of the provider. But if we have minimum standards of what that is, for example, you hold a CPA license or you're a retired CPA or whatever we might want that to be, we could put that in there. I have not had a chance to look at the exposure draft. So my feedback personally would be that we hold off on making those kind of suggestions until staff have an opportunity to look at how that particular topic is proposed to be addressed by the exposure draft related to CE, because we don't want to get out of sync with that, particularly with things like this that could limit our potential providers. So if you're open to that idea, I would suggest we take it up when we bring up this concept of the exposure draft. Yeah, just to get a sense of the landscape, who is the largest course provider?
I would just be guessing. I would be a guess that Cal CPA is one of the largest providers for California CPAs.
That and the AICPA, and so it's not just, we get CPE from
very small providers to very large providers.
Is there some kind of entry requirement in order to provide content that's qualified for CE?
All of those requirements are in our regulations. We in California do not pre-approve providers or courses. That is a requirement of our CPAs to ensure that they are utilizing providers that are offering CE consistent with regulations. Jason?
Jason Fox, the California Society of CPAs, I'd agree with Ms. Center. I mean, I think different providers have different kind of quality control measures in place. And even if you look at the NASBA standards, there are review checkpoints along that process from a course development, course approval from that standpoint to make sure that the content's correct, that you have the appropriate subject matter experts reviewing that and what that looks like. And so those are things that we adhere to from a provider standpoint. I think a lot of the quality ones are out that do something similar to that. They all might be a little bit different. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
May I add one thing, because I think it's very important and it relates to what Jason said. It also relates to something someone else said earlier, and forgive me, I can't remember who it was. But I believe that all of the additions that we have talked about adding are things that would not be new to any quality provider. So this idea that we're talking about using subject matter experts, putting in safeguards related to how they use AI, ensuring that people get certificates timely, ensuring that participant engagement is there, all of those things that our quality providers are already doing, right? So I just want to make sure that that is said, so we're not talking about really disrupting the provider community with the topics that we've provided.
I guess what was interesting and what was new to me is to know that the content providers are not pre-qualified by us, because you can have one person shop who's just creating content using AI, and they would be the subject matter experts who hopefully would be going through the citations and making sure that there are no hallucinations, right, when the content is being put together. But it's interesting to know, because it could be a very small shop who's just has a website. And, I would imagine CPAs would want to find a qualified CE provider, but sometimes cost matters. And if someone's offering a $5 course versus a $100 course, I would imagine that the person who's offering the cheaper course will probably have a lot more takers.
I would also note that there is a level of responsibility on a licensee to go seek courses that are appropriate from their standpoint too. So there's a provider and a licensee to make sure you're taking and ultimately it's the licensee's responsibility when they submit their requirements. I mean, that is a trade-off that California in this board has made of, there are more flexible, more options from how to capture and collect CE in different modes and mentalities and all that sort of stuff. But you do have a lot more on the edges that may not be in, a state model that looks at just a NASBA pre-qualified, model.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Batchelor.
This morning, when Ms. Hines brought up about the 60 days, I'm sorry. Okay. When Ms. Hines, Member Hines brought up the 60 days, if this is a fully formed motion, can those 60 days still be altered even though we vote on that? Okay, that's what I was curious about. Thank you.
All right, any other board member? Anybody from public in Burbank locations? Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Rada, you have a comment.
Yes, I just had a question about attendance. The recommendation of staff to add a clarifying statement that participant self-certification is not sufficient. I was just curious why we need that clarification if the existing regulations already require the attendance monitoring. I was just curious.
That was a comment that we heard as part of the drafting and these comments. We had conversations with NASBA staff, because at the same time we were having conversations, they were having conversations about making adjustments to their standards. And so that is something that came up as part of their conversation with providers or licensees. And we are trying to model it as much as we can with what we anticipated would be in the exposure draft that was coming out.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody from Burbank? Seeing none. Ms. Moderator, could you open up WebEx, please?
Certainly, if anyone would like to make a comment on the issue, you may look for the hand icon, typically at the bottom of your WebEx screen, or if you're on a mobile device, that hand might be behind the three-dot other options. And if you are a call-in user, you may press *3 to raise your hand. Any comments on the issue? I do not see any raised hands. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, thank you. Ms. Reed, can you call the roll?
Member 2?
Yes.
Member Rosenbaum?
Yes.
Member Rayful?
Yes.
Member Lynn?
Yes.
Member Lotta?
Yes.
Member Hines?
Yes.
Member Guzman?
Yes.
Member Dong?
Yes.
Member Corrigan?
Yes.
Member Batchelor?
Yes.
And Member Aguilera?
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you for that motion, and I know we have more. Go ahead.
The next agenda item discussed was CPC item 4, relating to the total number of CE hours required for active status license renewal. Similar to the prior agenda item, this item is also reflective of the CBA's strategic plan, Goal 2, Objective 2.4. Staff included an overview of the CBA's current CE requirements on page 2 of the agenda item. Information was also presented regarding the CE requirements contained in the Uniform Accountancy Act model rules and the CE hour requirements of other state boards of accountancy and other licensed professions within California. There was no motion required However, staff requested feedback and direction on the CBA's participation in the national discussion that is emerging regarding reducing the number of CE hours required for active license renewal. This would include areas or points of discussion the CBA wishes staff to raise as part of the national dialogue. The CPC discussed how to best move forward procedurally to continue research and analysis on this topic. Establishing a new ad hoc committee was brought forward as an option, but it was identified that the current CE work group has a broad charge to accomplish this and did already hold preliminary discussions about reducing the CE hours. The CPC discussed the CE required by other licensed professional boards in California, highlighting that health-related boards require less hours than CPAs and that most do not require any non-technical hours. The CPC stressed that ethics should be regularly taken to ensure licensees are regularly learning and engaging in ethical practices. The CPC was in favor of using the current CE work group to continue working on the topic and directed it to provide a report back to the CBA at a future meeting on why CE is needed, what it should look like, and with what topic areas. A proposal on the number of hours could follow based on this analysis. Mr. Fox from Cal CPA commented that they value CE and lifelong learning as foundational for being a good professional. They want good and qualified CPAs, and he believes it's important for the CBA to be a part of the conversation. He encouraged the CBA to establish a framework that would include research by engaging stakeholders, licensees, CE providers, and others to inform their final decision. Mr. Fox also mentioned this could have implications on cross-border practice and that professional standards also have requirements for CE. He concluded stating that CE should emphasize competency and be aware of any and all implications as changes are considered. There is no motion on this item, but it would be nice to see if any other board members have comments.
Yes, Ms. Dong?
Yeah, so thank you for that. And I also thought it was very interesting to see the number of CEs required for other California licensed professionals. I think perhaps one of the objectives of reducing CEs is to make it easier or perhaps more appealing for students to become CPAs. And I think the way to do that is look at the other pathways into accounting and finance. So is it possible for staff to also pull in the number of CE hours required for similar professions like CFAs, CFPs, CMAs? These are other types of chartered designations that allow professionals to work in a financial related career.
Yes, I'm sure Ms. Center got that note. Anybody else? Mr. Rosenbaum?
Yeah, I think what a great topic to be discussing, and thank you both Mr. Aguilera and Ms. Batchelor for volunteering your time and effort to this because it's an important thing for us. I guess my personal view is it's going to be a challenge for you to come up with justifications, particularly since we have nothing to start with. Even justifying the current levels. But I do agree that comparing it to other licensed professionals is a very good start. I think we need to have some level of good continuing education or good requirements for that. And it's not just to ensure basic competence and completion, but to also make sure that we have providers available so that when, for example, I think Ms. Corrigan said in the CPC meeting, if you've got some sort of a special topic or something that you're not quite familiar with, you'd like to be able to turn to something like that. We need to have the availability of those courses. Regarding the non-technical, I don't think, I just want to make sure that there's, just the way it was worded, there's not a requirement to do any non-technical. It's sort of a default. You've got a certain number to do, but it has to be at least 40 hours of technical in your 2-year period. I know I was kind of going to go back and look and see how many technical versus non-technical that I ever do. And the non-technical is not very high. But there are things that I might be interested in that are qualified CPE courses that aren't technical, but that are useful. So I think it's still okay to have the availability to have non-technical as opposed to having 100% technical classes. But I do personally feel that we probably are a little overboard with 80 hours as a comment.
Thank you for that. And then Ms. Lada and then Ms. Dong.
Thank you. Mr. Rosenbaum raises a good point. In my makeup of the non-technical versus the technical, I do the 40 of the technical and the majority of the rest is non-technical. So I've now aware that everyone may not be in the same, levels in regards to that. I was curious, is it possible to do some research? Is staff able to research that at all so we can have a better idea of what the current CPAs are doing in regards to that non-technical technical split, or is that not a feasible project we can add to this?
We'll take a look to see what we can do.
All right, Ms. Dong, since Ms. Batcher hasn't talked yet, I'm going to have her go next.
Thank you, President Tu. As you all probably saw earlier in the meeting, I wanted to be part of the public, but I wasn't able to be. Now, that's something that I did learn. Members can be part of the public. Is that correct?
You can, but it's better that you do your comment during the meeting so
Okay.
that,
Yeah, that's correct. You're not a member of the public, you are a member of this board.
Okay, got it. I'm on board now. Okay. I was privileged enough, thank you, past President Rosenbaum. He appointed myself and Member Aguilar to the committee, and it's been interesting work and pretty hard work. And I finally had a little influence for Member Aguilar. I brought him over from the dark side into the light, I should say. But anyway, because we don't have a baseline in terms of any kind of logic why we're putting in 80 hours, my proposal was going to be in our meeting that we just start from a clean slate. And what I mean by that, we have areas in our profession, like say, for instance, government. If someone's practicing in government, I think if I'm not mistaken, it's about 24 hours you have to do. So that 24 hours should be put on the slate. Also, within the area of attestation, we have fraud that you have to be accounted for. I don't know if fraud is 4 or 8 hours. I'm going to say 8. I don't do any attest or any government anymore. So back in my day when I did do it, I did have to put in 8 hours. So that's 24 plus 8 right there. So what I'm doing and what my thought process is to build a slate to build on versus knocking down from the 80 hours. We build up to how many CPE we need. I think that would be a good logic to follow, since there's no guidelines as to why it's 80. And then another area is Member Hines brought up this morning, ethics. That's 4 hours of ethics every renewal period. So that should be put on the table as well. Another one is regulatory review. Regulatory review is 2 hours every 6 years. And so that couple of hours should be put on there because we don't know. All of us are not renewing all at the same time and at the same time, in the same areas of regulatory review. So just looking at that type of baseline, instead of removing, we build up to it. And I think that would be a good base to start. And then when we come up, say for instance, if it comes up to be about 50 hours in everything I had just mentioned, then that would be 50 hours in technical, because a lot of us have a tendency to change our mind. We might want to get into new areas of practice. So I say, for instance, myself, I do tax. I don't have to do the 24 hours or anything like that. but it's saying, maybe I want to. So if I do, it's already set where that's a part of the technical guidelines where I need to go. So that's my thought process, and I am going to discuss this more in depth with the working group. And I think that would probably be a good start. Now, in terms of non-technical, me being a business owner, there are areas in the non-technical that I do pay attention to and that I do enjoy. Say, for instance, like marketing and maybe building a firm or something of that sort. Those are areas that you do and that you receive CPE in, and they're beneficial to you. So I think this is a really good start, but I don't think it should be mandatory in terms of, let's say, if we set it at 60, then you have to push for the 60, and now you're listening for the buzzer to hit the button while you're trying to do a tax plan. So think about a surgeon that has to really focus in on his patient. You don't want your surgeon listening to the buzzer to hit it, and when he's trying to, make sure that he saves this person's life. So the area really, really needs an overhaul and make it more attractive for students. Last point, many firms, especially the larger firms, they pay for their employees CPE. If it's 80 hours for each 100 employee, that's a lot to spend. So then the kids grumble now about the starting pay is so low versus for an RN. RN first year of practice probably pulls about 90,000. CPA student, they don't pull that type of money. 6 months from graduation, they have to start paying their student loans back. And then so therefore, if there's a student that doesn't have the privilege of having a firm pay for their 80 hours of CPE, they have to pay on their own. The average cost is probably in the mid $300 per class. That's a lot for a student only making about $60,000 a year, especially with the cost of living in here in California alone. So there's many, many variables that we need to look at and consider and make it more feasible, not only for our students, but also for ourselves. Because I know I have wasted a lot of money listening to the bell just in order for me to meet the requirements. And it's very unreasonable as far as I'm concerned. So that's all I have to say about that.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts and your thought process, especially. Ms. Dong.
I think those are really good points, Mrs. Batchelor. I think it's important to look at it from the perspective of a student and, sort of think ahead to how does this career compare to other careers where maybe the CEs aren't as onerous and not as expensive, right? I guess my point, the one that I wanted to raise is sort of echoing what I'd said earlier, which is instead of looking at the quantity of hours, can we think a little bit more about the quality? Because we currently don't QC any of the Cs, so we don't provide any quality control. So we really don't know what kind of content is being put out there. As long as you do your 80 hours, then you're fine. There isn't even a technical requirement. So if there is a way for us to think a little bit more about what kind of content's provided, what are the minimum standards, I think that would help in terms of making sure that the quality of accountants that are in California remains consistent. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Oh, Mr. Rosenbaum.
Yeah, I just have one more thought for the working group to consider, and that is with respect to the required regulatory review class. That's currently on a 6-year cycle, which is different than our 4-year cycle. So I also believe it's not only relevant, but important, and probably one of the required classes we should insist upon. And I would probably even move that to every 4 years so that we have that consistent with our ethics requirement.
All right. Oh, yes, Ms. Hine.
One thing that we haven't said out loud about the need for regulating continuing education and why the Board of Accountancy would make this a priority is tying it to our responsibility for protecting the consumers. And a lot of our discussions around this have centered around the impact on the practitioner of having this requirement of continuing education and the ways in which our board needs to be mindful about over-regulating the practice of accountancy and the ways that it affects the licensee. But really, we're thinking about this from the perspective of making sure that all of our licensees have a certain level of competency, because that's going to protect the public, or because, we believe that there's a rational connection between the competency of the practitioner and the protection of the public. So as the work group is coming back with recommendations, I think it will be important to have more of that language in the recommendations in order to, sort of address criticisms that are out there about these requirements of continuing education. As we're looking at some of the other jurisdictions around the country, other states that are, moving towards, sort of the lowest common denominator, or like no floor, no regulation, they are not talking about it in the context of protecting the public. They're talking about it in the context of the burden on the licensee. I think someone mentioned, I don't remember if they mentioned it in the discussion or just in passing, about the kinds of disciplinary actions that we see, come, before us, and why we're able to, oversee these disciplinary actions. They do give us some understanding of like what are some of the, stretches and gaps in the practice. So just, I think some of that language needs to be incorporated into the discussions that we're having, that ultimately this is about making sure that the public has access to practitioners that have a certain level of competency, and that competency is maintained, on an ongoing basis, and that this, there's a certain, baseline as to what is expected. The public can expect that competency means.
May I please address and answer? When I was speaking in terms of, like, say, for instance, with government, and that's 24 hours, there's very difficult coursework in that particular area. Yellow Book, which is based like on nonprofit federal awards. These are courses that adhere to competencies towards these areas of practice. So that's why when I say when we're building up, it's SARS, that's for accounting and auditing. Let me see, what is SARS? Statements on Standards of Audit and Review. Accounting and review, that's right. Those are the SARS. So I think when you do practice accounting or any source of that, you have to have those SARS standards of practice in there. So with that buildup that I was speaking of, these will be captured. These are technical courses that will capture that in order for the CPA to be competent. What I was saying is the overage. So you don't need, if you need 8 hours in SARS, you don't need it, and you get that in that first year. It's why do it the second year also, for you to make up the other 40 hours that we need for the second year. So we are working on that in order to have competency. Just wanted to let you know. Okay.
Right. I'm really loving the discussion. And Ms. Latta?
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I appreciate Ms. Batchelor's approach of kind of starting with the clean slate. That does seem like a good way to kind of come from both ends and get to the right result in the end. I just wanted to add that I think it's becoming clear to me that in order to justify a revision of these hours, that we should attempt to define what appropriate competency is for license renewal. And I think, we're not exactly sure how to define that yet or how to get there, but I think that would be really critical in terms of making any types of revisions in the future. So I think the bottom up approach is a start to defining what that appropriate competency is in order to help us get to the end result. Thank you.
Wow, this is a fabulous discussion, and you get, especially work members as well as staff are getting a lot of input, and we appreciate that from the board members. It's not an action item, so if nobody needs to speak anymore, we will have Mr. Aguilar continue his report.
Moving on to CPC item 5, which was the discussion and possible action to initiate a rulemaking to amend and adopt regulations primarily for the implementation of AB 1175. This agenda item aligns with goals 2 and 5 of our current strategic plan, as noted on page 1 of the agenda item. At its January 2025, May 2025, and July 2025 meetings, the CBA approved a series of policy directions to inform the proposed regulatory changes necessary to implement the provisions of AB 1175. Staff provided a detailed review of the proposed regulations and corresponding forms incorporated by reference, which were included as attachments 1 and 3 respectively. There was also a discussion regarding the timeline of the legislation, which is included in your hand carry folder. The CPC recognized staff for their hard work on developing the regulatory package. The CPC recommends that the CBA adopt the staff motion as written in the item, which includes a contingency clause on the enactment of AB 1175. This is a fully formed motion and a second is not needed. I'll now turn it back over to President Tu for a vote.
Thank you for that report. Anybody have any comments or discussion? Seeing none, I would like to give an opportunity for the public in Burbank to make comment. Seeing none, Ms. Moderator, could you open up WebEx, please?
Certainly. If anyone would like to make a comment on the issue or the motion, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand. And our call-in users may press *3 to raise their hand. Are there any comments on the issue? I do not see any raised hands. Shall I close the public comment period?
Yes, thank you very much. Ms. Reed, could you take a vote?
Member Aguilera?
Yes.
Member Batchelor?
Yes.
Member Corrigan?
Yes.
Member Dong?
Yes.
Member Guzman?
Yes.
Member Hines?
Yes.
Member Lotta?
Yes.
Member Lynn?
Yes.
And Member Tu?
Hello.
Yes.
And Member Rayful?
Yes.
And Member Tu?
Yes,
All right, motion carries.
thanks. Thank you, Ms. Reed. All right, you have one more item.
The final agenda item discussed, CPC item 6, focused on alternative practice structures, or APS, and the rise of private equity investment in CPA firms. Staff presented background information about APS and the evolution of private equity. Information was shared on current topics of concern being raised by regulators, including independence and objectivity, meaning private equity's profit motives could create conflicts of interest and may pressure audit judgments. Governance, meaning the dual entity structures can obscure who controls the attest firm. Third, consumer protection and transparency. Clients may be confused which entity is licensed or regulated. Fourth, cross-border practice and jurisdictional issues. APS firms often operate across multiple jurisdictions, complicating oversight. The executive officer was appointed to the NASBA Private Equity Task Force to evaluate the implications of PE investment in CPA firms and identify ways to support state boards in their oversight responsibilities. He was also asked to participate in a panel discussion at the upcoming NASBA annual conference regarding this topic. Staff recommended that the CBA evaluate the topics outlined in the agenda item along with any CBA developed topics to establish a list of topics for CBA leadership, members, and executive officer to share with stakeholders as they take part in future national discussions. The CPC acknowledged Mr. Franzella's appointment to the NASBA committee, which enables California to have a voice in the discussions, and further commended Mr. Franzella on his thorough presentation. The CPC requested we identify leaders on this topic and consider having them provide a future presentation to the CBA, which may help provide a further understanding of the actual scenarios that are being faced now or could be encountered in the future. The CPC discussed the need for modernizing the use of the CPA title and understanding the ease of the CPA title and the use of the CPA title and the inability to use the title, which may circle back to this being regulated differently in various jurisdictions, or that this is a new topic and laws have not been established. So in other words, if there's not clarity, maybe it's easier just not to hold myself out as a CPA. The CPC also supported staff's recommendation that the CBA evaluate the items noted in the subsection possible topics for CBA consideration. See pages 6 through 9. For CBA leadership, member, and executive officer to share with stakeholders as they take part in future national discussions. Mr. Fox, on behalf of Cal CPA, stated that firms are feeling pressure, expenses are increasing, and finding capital is important and will likely continue into the future. He concurred that confusion does exist on the use of the CPA title, and it's important to have the CBA engaged in these discussions on the national level. It was shared that there will be a white paper issued that the CBA will want to provide comments on. However, there may be a short comment period. That concludes my report, and I'll turn it back to President Tu.
Thank you. That was his last item, everybody. So do you have any more comments or questions on that last item? Seeing none, I'm now going to take public comment, but I'm taking public comment for item 14, B and D, because I was remiss in not taking public comment for B. Anybody from Burbank? Seeing none, Ms. Moderator, can you open up WebEx, please?
Certainly, if anyone would like to make a comment about the CPC meeting and items B or D, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand, or our calling users may press *3 to raise their hand. Are there any comments? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that public comment feature?
Yes, please. Thank you very much.
You're
All
welcome.
right, we're moving on. I'm moving the agenda a little bit. So item number 11, regulations, Ms. Pierce.
Thank you. The purpose of this agenda item is to provide the board the opportunity to approve the modifications to the proposed disciplinary guidelines and model orders, which is incorporated by reference in the California Code of Regulations, Title 16, Section 98. Direct staff to notice the modified text for a 15-day public comment period, which is included in your hand carry folder if you want to reference, and adopt the proposed modified regulatory text in Title 16, Section 98, should no timely, relevant, or adverse comments be received that are specifically directed at the proposed modified text. The CBA previously approved the initiation of a rulemaking to include various changes to the CBA's disciplinary guidelines. The CBA published a notice of the proposed changes in the California Regulatory Notice as required by the Office of Administrative Law, and had a 45-day public comment period, which concluded on August 4th. The CBA received one comment during this period. The statements made by the commenter were unrelated to any amendments proposed. Therefore,